Hi, I'm Joe Cologi, and I'm here with Paul O'Brien, Catherine Miller, Bob Mercurio, and we're doing a demonstration of cooking for the Sheffield Historical Society. Let's talk about the lasagna for a minute. The lasagna, as Catherine knows, Catherine and I go to the same church, Christ Trinity, Bob. The lasagna started to become a tradition here because I started making the lasagna for our church annual meeting. Is that when I was doing it?
Correct.
Annual meeting. And it kind of grew every year to a kind of tradition where we started out with, I don't know, 50, 60 people. I think we hover around 60, 70 now. And so it's something everybody kind of enjoyed and looked forward to. Unfortunately, this year with COVID, we did not have the chance to get together. And it was really interesting. One of our congregation members expressed how much she missed that. And so I decided, okay, you know what? I'll make the lasagna. You'll pick it up curbside. So we were able to keep our tradition alive. And I think I would say this is probably the third or fourth year I've been making lasagna for this. So it's a community effort. Everybody pitches in our church always. And it's a wonderful thing, and it keeps our spirit going. So what I'm making today is a lasagna that has a big, huge history. Most of it has to do with how I got to it. I started working for a caterer in New York about 20-some years ago, Dee Austin. I would call my mentor. I knew a lot about food. I had cooked a lot. I had a lot of cooking jobs before that. But when I came to her, I really learned about food. I really learned about different types of food. I learned about technique. I was always just kind of working around parameters of that. This recipe, which I could never understand, was always offered for very informal sort of gatherings, whether it was a big lunch or an after celebration kind of meal, something like that. And the recipe is for lasagna originally from a man named Ed Giobbi, Giobbi, correct, Bob? Bob knows my spelling. He is my spell check, okay? And boy, do I need it. But anyway, Ed Giobbi, this recipe appeared in the New York Times in 1972, and it was a huge hit. And my experience with this was when I came into Dee's kitchen in about 1995, somewhere around there. We were making this lasagna from Ed Giobbi's basic recipe. Over the years, I have made this recipe hundreds of times, and I agree with one thing Bob always says to me is that when you're going to make a recipe for the first time, follow the recipe exactly as it's written. And I agree with that. I think that that's exactly what you do. So I have done the recipe as you will find on the website or in the information with this video, the original recipe from Ed Giobbi's 1972 New York Times article. And then you will find a variation, which is my variation. But I want you to know, everybody has their own taste, their own liking, and once you get to know something, you tweak it the way you like it. Things are not always the same for everybody, but this is going to be your basic, really good, special occasion lasagna. It's a little bit of work. There are a lot of steps involved in it, but it's worth it. And this is going to be my version of Ed Giobbi's lasagna.
And you can freeze it and save it.
And you can freeze it and save it. You can freeze it when it's not baked. You can freeze it when it's baked. It's a very durable lasagna. It's had many lives, trust me. This lasagna has traveled. But yes, you can freeze and bake it. It's not a problem at all. So we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to start to build our lasagna. The first thing we have to do is make the sauce. Now, I have 2 pounds of sausage. I have both sweet and hot sausage here, Italian sausage. I have 8 cups of tomato. These are Italian San Marzano tomatoes. I'm giving you the real deal today, okay?
Pureed?
I pureed them. They come whole, I'm gonna crush them up. You can crush them with your hands if you want to. Actually, I kind of like it every now and then when I get a chunk of tomato or something. I'm not particular about that. 2 carrots, chopped up. About 3 or 4 cloves of garlic, chopped up. And 4 cups of onions, chopped. Not a science, doesn't have to be teeny tiny or exact. I'm adding fennel. This is fennel seed that I crushed in my little crusher, my mortar and pestle. And the reason I'm adding this is when I started making this recipe long ago, there was fennel in the sausage. If you went to the store and bought sausage, there was fennel in the sausage. Somehow it's started to disappear, or I'm not tasting it, because the last few times I've realized, even when I look at the sausage, I take it out of the casing, there's no fennel in it, or there's very little fennel in it, and I like that, so I'm adding fennel into this.
How much?
This is about, I'd say this is about 2 teaspoons after you grind it up, okay?
So how does this collection of ingredients vary from the so-called original recipe?
The original recipe, he does not have fennel,
No fennel.
because I guess his sausage would have had that. The original recipe has a pound of sausage, sweet Italian, and a pound of ground beef. Now I realized I liked a little bit of hot sausage and the sweet sausage, and then I just like the sausage more than I like the beef. He also has mushrooms,
Oh.
sliced mushrooms. So over time, that's what I've adapted. This is what I think is perfect for me. You can do whatever works for you. All right, here we go. We're gonna make the first sauce. Notice I said first sauce because there's more than one sauce in this recipe. All right, so what I have is a little extra virgin olive oil in this pan. We've got a nice sort of medium-high heat, but not too high. I'm just gonna start the sausage off and start to brown it. And just get a little color. You don't have to cook this all the way. What you wanna do is just get the red and the pink out of the sausage. So we'll start that.
And how much olive oil do you put in there?
A couple of tablespoons. When you start to make the marinara, the tomato part of the sauce, that's when you're going to add about maybe 1/3 of a cup, 1/2 cup of olive oil.
Oh.
Yeah. All right, we're getting a little color on here now. You can see it's beginning to get a little brown. And like I said, you don't have to cook this all the way. It's going to go into the sauce. It's going to simmer. It's also going to then go into the lasagna and cook. So that's what we do. I got this gadget.
Cool.
Okay, because I make this lasagna so often, this is a wonderful time saver, and it breaks up any kind of meat you might need broken up. So if you make chili a lot or anything like that, this little device will save your wrist and your arm a lot of work.
If you don't have it, what do you do? Because who in God's name is going to have
If
that?
you don't have it, you still have to just keep breaking it apart.
What do you call that gizmo?
I don't know.
Pretty cool.
I don't even know if it has a name. All I
The
know is
sausage breaker upper.
as sausage breaker upper. I saw it somewhere online and I thought, that's what I need, because I was doing so much of this at the time.
Was there fennel in that sausage?
There's fennel in this sausage.
You get a little oil, yeah.
Yeah.
So Joe, when you're cooking for the church's annual meeting, how many times do you increase this recipe?
Oh boy.
You're talking for 60
Probably
people.
about sometimes 9 or 10 times. You know, and what ends up happening is because I make such an enormous amount, I just make a ton of everything. Assemble lasagnas, whatever's left over goes in the freezer. I can have extra sauce, I can have extra filling, and I use it for other things later. So nothing goes to waste.
And you make it in those big
And I
aluminum pans.
yes, I make the lasagna in a huge pan, which has about, I don't know, 30 portions or
portions.
something per pan. All right, so we're pretty brown. I think that looks good.
Yep.
So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drain this.
Can you overcook the sausage at this point?
Yeah, you could, but I don't think you really could. You know, because it goes into a sauce and it's going to then simmer for 45 minutes or whatever, I don't think you can really hurt it, but don't brown it. Just get a little color on it like this so that you get most of the fat out. There's a lot of flavor in the fat. I even experimented at one point when I used to leave a lot of the fat in the pan and use that to saute my onions and things like that. But, you know, it's okay. You don't have to do that. But once I do this, and I get rid of this fat, I'm going to wipe this pan out and keep going. So let's put that on the side. All right, next phase. I'm going to wipe out all of this muck. You don't have to be really serious about it. Just get some of the stuff out. And add a little more olive oil. This is the part where you're going to add about a half a cup, anywhere between a third and a half a cup. I'm going to eyeball it because that's what I do. For you, if you want to measure it, measure it. Bob measures everything.
And things come out better.
And that's where we differ. I don't
Yeah.
really measure anything. Never have. Unless you're baking. And of course, yes.
But I understand Bob's become an excellent cook.
And Bob's always been an excellent cook. He just stopped when he met me. So he decided,
My dad used to say there should be 1 star in every show.
yeah, there's 1 star in every
There is
show.
a star.
And there's a director on every set. So, so now I put my onions in here. This is 4 cups chopped sweet onions. That's all. I'm gonna let this get going, a little bit of color on it. And just gonna add. At this point, what you really want to be careful about is when you add salt. Once you add salt, you can't take it out. So always just cautiously salt. Salt is for seasoning. Salt's going to help the vegetables release their water. It's going to let them start to cook quicker, break down a little bit, which is what you want. You also want the sweetness of the onions. We don't want caramelized onions. We just want them to be a little bit translucent. But when you're going to season this now, that's to just get it going. The sausage is very salty. And then there's going to be Parmesan cheese. So as you go along, taste and see. But don't just like look at a recipe and say, I'm going to add all that salt in. It usually doesn't work. So get a little bit of color on this. Now let's just put the carrots right in. Get that going. Okay, so now a little bit of salt. You know, people always say, but you do that. You kind of have to sprinkle it around and let it fall, especially if you're salting a steak or if you're salting a salad, anything like that. You want to let from above so that it disperses. You get an even salting. Now I'm going to add my chopped garlic. Again, we're just going for a little bit of sort of just getting the vegetables started because this is going to go into a sauce that's going to simmer for at least 45 minutes to get a nice, deep, rich flavor. Okay. And then at this point, I like to add my fennel. Okay. All right. Once this begins to cook down, it's a little more softer, maybe about 2 or 3 more minutes, we'll add the tomatoes. And then we'll add the sausage back in. All right, looking good, getting a little soft here. All right, this is our tomatoes. Okay, this is San Marzano tomatoes. It's about 2 28-ounce cans, and I pureed it, like I said before. You don't have to puree it, you can break it up with your hands. It just depends on how you like it. All right, now we're going.
Oh, it smells so good.
Now
Sure
we're
does.
getting there.
Yeah, it really does.
All right. This just nice and
I don't think the garlic has anything to do with that.
No.
No.
Now you'll see, that's not really fat. I think I've drained off most of the fat. This juice is from the sausage itself and a little bit. You don't want to get rid of that. That's going to give you a lot of flavor. So don't be confused. When you pour off the fat in the beginning, get rid of it. But whatever's left might have a little flavor and something you can use. So, all right. Now, once this begins to simmer, we're going to turn the heat down and let it go for 45 minutes. and let it all meld together. And at that point, I will taste it and season it with a little salt and pepper. All right? Okay, it's been about 45 minutes. Believe it or not,
How
time
time
flies
flies.
when you're having fun. Okay, so I have seasoned this with a little salt and pepper. I'm just going to take a taste, see what I think now. I think it's great. I wouldn't do a thing to it. I'm not going to. It's perfect. All right? All right. Bechamel time. Okay. What we're going to do here, you're going to start out melting your butter. Just get that going. Next, you're going to add, once the butter is melted, you're going to add your flour. And this is a little bit of a little trick I learned when I was doing this from Dee, of course. When you put the flour in and you're whisking it, you keep it moving. Don't stop. Otherwise, it will stick to the bottom of the pan and it'll start to brown. The one thing you're looking for is when you're cooking raw flour and butter together, there's a certain smell, I want to say scent, odor, whatever, aroma. And you'll notice it when you're cooking the flour because it's almost like a raw flour smell. And I might be getting a little too picky, but what you do is, once the butter's melted, turn the heat down, add your flour in, just dump it all in. And then you want to start to keep it going until you get everything incorporated and going nicely. You want to get what that smells like is something you should remember because you don't want that smell. What you want is the flour to cook that smell off. So it just takes that raw edge off of the sauce. It tastes more nutty, but you don't want it to get brown, not like a nut or anything. It takes about a minute or so, and I can smell it's beginning to disappear. It's not so strong. We will do that. And now we're going to add in our milk. And you want to keep stirring. And as this begins to thicken up, we'll add the heavy cream in. It'll take a couple of minutes. All right. Now you can see has thickened up. Okay.
Smooth.
Turn this down a little more. And we're going to add in the heavy cream. There's a big lump of cream in here at some point. I saw it come out earlier. Well, there it is. Okay. Let's get that going a little bit. In the bechamel, it's interesting. Later on you'll see, in his original recipe, he takes the bechamel and pours it into the meat sauce.
Huh.
Okay? Now, I've seen that. I mean, I remember when I first had lasagna as a kid or something, I never understood it. Sometimes it had something that seemed kind of creamy in it, and then other times it was just like a tomato and noodle thing. But the bechamel is sometimes an unusual thing. But I'm not fond of pouring this whole thing into that sauce. What I'm going to do, or that sauce, there are more than one sauces here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drizzle this as we go along because I don't like a lot of bechamel. I just like a certain amount because nutmeg has a little bit of something, and that's what I mean. You want those back notes. So that's what we're going to do with this. And you can see it's thickening up. All right, we're getting there.
How do you know when that's completed?
It's going to coat the back of the spoon. So when you run your finger through it, and the line stays in the spoon, and I'll show you in a minute. Then you'll know that the sauce is done. All right, now I'm going to add my nutmeg. All right, I'm just going to add a little bit of salt. And purists would only use white pepper. I am not a purist in any way, so I'm going to use black pepper.
And I don't like white pepper, so
Yeah, and since Bob doesn't like white pepper, we don't have it. So there you go. Okay, now see, it's beginning to come along. It's thickening up. Take it just about a minute more, and you'll see how fast this comes together. This
Does
is
that, once you reach that point, does it sit at that point? It doesn't thicken up on you?
yeah, no, it stays there. And if it does, you can just add a little bit more milk, or just if you find you went past that point. And, but this sauce is very forgiving. And this is the basis of a cheese sauce or anything like that. At this point, if you were going to have just a cheese sauce, you would add Romano or Parmesan into this sauce. All right, there we go. So
Oh, okay.
there you're going to see, and there you have a line. Done. Okay, set this sauce aside. The next part, we have 1 pound of whole milk ricotta. Okay, 1 cup Parmesan Reggiano, 3 eggs, parsley, salt and pepper. This is going to be part of the filling. It's going to go in between, so we're just going to dump everything together. Everybody in the pool. And a little salt. Not a lot. The cheese is very salty. Pepper and parsley.
So I saw that you put 3 eggs in. What's the purpose of the eggs in the ricotta?
The eggs are a binder, a stabilizer. Ricotta has a lot of water in it and a lot of moisture. So what you need is something that's not going to just let everything go out into the lasagna. It's a little bit of just a little bit of a stabilizer.
Really rich. It is rich.
We're going to make our lasagna. We're going to assemble this. A little trick I learned from Ina on her show, Ina Garten. Thank goodness, she's a wonderful, wonderful cook. She uses hot water. She does not boil her noodles. Okay? Get pot, bowl, big flat dish, whatever you have. Fill it with hot water and just start to lay your noodles in. You work it a few at a time, whatever. This takes a little bit, maybe 5 minutes or so, for the noodles to start to soften up a bit. But once you get them in there, you don't have to do anything. That's it. That's all you do.
You're gonna soften them so they just sort of
No,
very.
they're just going to be wet, like you'll see. And I'll use these in maybe 3 or 4 minutes. That's all. So we're going to begin to build the lasagna. All right. So the first step is, this is a 9 by 13 lasagna pan. All right, meaning it's deep. It's about 2 3/4, but it's a 9 by 13. If you use a smaller pan, a lower pan, you're not going to get all the layers, but that's fine. It's still going to be delicious. It's just that you're not going to get that deep, unctuous lasagna that you want.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Right. So let's just put a layer of sauce. We're not going to go crazy, but this is how.
So you always start with sauce on the bottom.
Yes, so that it doesn't stick into the pan. Okay, give you something that releases when you're gonna start with your noodles. Okay, so that's our first.
So that's not just the skim coat of sauce.
Well,
There's
this sauce
there
is
in the
pretty
meat.
thick.
It's thick,
In other
yeah.
words, you can't really just skim coat it, but just you don't need a lot. You just want to get the bottom
Yeah.
of the pan covered.
There's not a
All right,
little
now
either.
you can see these noodles have begun to change color slightly. And the softer they get, the quicker you should use them. But these are doing just fine right now. So now you have to figure out which way do the noodles go in the pan. Because you can waste a lot of noodles. I have wasted a lot of noodles. I think with this pan, I go this way, or do I go this way? I think I go this way, and I just break off the edge. You know, and then I don't throw these away. I save these because, like, later on, I might need a little piece here and there. See, there we go. And we're just gonna kind of come across here.
And you're overlapping. I see.
Overlapping just a tad. Okay. Well, I don't have to, but I don't like to get cheated. I like my lasagna noodles when I bite into it. So, yeah.
Have you ever used the pre-cooked
I used
noodles?
to use them all the time until I saw Ina do this. And I thought, well, I'm not doing that anymore. So, that's good. Okay, we're good there. All right, now, here's the tricky part, okay? We're going to take a little bit of this ricotta mixture. And just kind of spread that around. All right, I've got a little offset spatula here just to get this smoothed out. And again, everything is going to just start to melt together once you start to cook this. So it doesn't have to be like perfectly smeared all over the place and even. You just want it to be delicious. That's all that counts. Sprinkle the Parmesan on. Okay, nice little bit. Shredded mozzarella, that's next. We go with that.
You buy shredded mozzarella, or do you shred it yourself?
I buy it. I used to shred it myself. You know, I know there's a lot of people that say they don't like to use the shredded because it has some sort of flour or something on it that keeps it from sticking together. I don't really have a problem with that. I think it's delicious. It hasn't ever really bothered me. Let me get that out of the way. And now, our bechamel. Okay, here we go. And like I said, I just like to do a little drizzle of this. I think it just kind of works its way into the lasagna and the sauce. That's good. All right. And now, we do another layer of the meat sauce. This is why you don't want a narrow pan, okay? Because you're not going to get all that stuff, okay? And when I do this for the church, you know the pan is like that deep. You don't want to, you don't want a shallow pan. So, okay, here we go again. Let's just do this. Now you don't have to go heavy at this point because now you have a little room with all those pockets from the cheese and elements in there. Take a piece of parchment paper, which is, that's a Martha Stewart trick, okay? Parchment paper is always rolling back up. Just ball it up, wrinkle it all up, then you can get it to do whatever you want. You can get it to lie in the pan, you can get it to just lie flat. And so what are we doing? We're covering this with parchment because there's tomato acid in this sauce, so you don't want it to burn through the aluminum foil. And then we're going to cover aluminum foil. Wrap this sucker up nice and tight. Okay. Preheat your oven to 375. You're going to put the lasagna in for anywhere between, I'd say, an hour, if you've got a deep one like this, to about an hour and 10 minutes, 15 minutes, depends. You want it to be bubbling around the edges, piping hot.
Covered though? You're going to put it in the oven covered, yeah.
Covered for that
You
period
leave
of
the
time.
parchment paper in there?
Yep, that's gonna, and then once it's been in the oven for about 45 minutes, an hour, whatever, and you take this cover off, don't worry about it at that point. After the hour or 45-minute mark, just take the cover off. You'll see where you're at. Okay, and then at that point, leave it in the oven until you know it's really getting hot. You can see.
Bubbles.
I like to test the center. That's the worst place. I mean, because the outside can be done, the center is cold. Always want to test the center. So I have an instant read thermometer. I try to get it to 160, 165 would be really make you happy, because then you know you're not going to have any living bacteria or anything like that. 165 is the magic 160. But I like to just be a little careful. Once that's done, you see the color of the lasagna and you decide whether or not you want to put it under the broiler for a minute or two, just to get more color. You know, it depends on what it looks like. But at that point, do not walk away from anything under the broiler, because it will burn in no time, right? You're talking 1 or 2 minutes under the broiler, and it's going to get nice and brown. All right. Okay, we're back. It's out of the oven. It's lasagna. Okay.
Wow.
So, Paul, you were asking me a question before.
Yeah, so when you're taking the temperature and trying to get the 160 to 165, you've taken the foil off of it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and then to get that brown, let's say I don't want to use my broiler.
Right.
Can I get that color by just leaving it in the oven for an extra 10, 15
Yes,
minutes?
because what's going to happen is this particular, they're all very different. I don't know why. I don't know whether it's just how much moisture's in the cheese, how much water's in the ricotta, the egg, whatever. This one actually did cook without having to put it under the broiler.
Oh,
It
okay.
did brown up. What happened was once I took the foil off, it was still very cold in the center. And I just kept letting it go. I just left it in the oven. It's 375. That's a hot oven. So you don't want to, leave it too long. But check it every 5, 10 minutes, something like that. But it just started to brown nicely on its own. So we got a great lasagna.
And then you let it sit before you dig into it?
And then you have to let it rest for about 10 to 15 minutes. Some people say 20 minutes. Might be a little not so, warm enough at that point, but I would say a good 10 to 15 minutes. Lasagna has to pull itself back together. All the cheeses have to kind of come back. The ricotta things, you've got a lot of wet ingredients. Once they start to cool off, they'll then let you hold the shape of the lasagna when you cut it. All right, so we're back now. We're going to do the salad. We're going to just put the finishing touches on the salad. I sliced very thinly, paper thinly, laser thin, okay, because I don't like fat, chopped up onions. A red onion. In this, I have had white vinegar, just plain Heinz, whatever, white vinegar, sugar, and salt. Okay, to your taste. Now, there's no real recipe for this. This I learned from my mom when she was making Polish potato salad, my Japanese mother. Okay, who learned it from my father's mother. Okay, but anyway, so what you do is just put the onions in here, let them sit for an hour. It doesn't matter, overnight, not very long. What I like to do is just kind of get most of that juice off of there, and just, they're not as harsh anymore. They're not going to kill you. They're not going to have that raw oniony bite. Now my secret,
What's the difference?
the secret to my success.
Yes.
Good seasons. All right, now everybody at the church, so we're saying hundreds of people.
And all of your clients.
And all of my clients, well, now the cat's out of the bag. All right, so anyway, I find that this is the best salad dressing for this particular salad. When I have ever had salad or anything at a pizza parlor, there's something about the dressing that I just can't replicate. I said it's got a certain taste, it's got a certain, I don't know what it is, balance of whether it's spicy, whether it's peppery, whether it's just garlicky, but I found it in this, okay? And I've been using this ever since I started making a lasagna dinner. So, all the directions are on the box. You got your little marked up bottle, okay?
This is no joke.
No joke. A little salt, always, just a little. Okay, we're gonna have a little pepper. And
Not too much yet.
there we go. And let's just, okay. And toss our salad. Time to eat. Recipe the original recipe says that this serves 8.
Boy, it should say
I
9.
think it serves at least.
Well, this makes 12.
I
What
know,
you're
but
doing
I mean,
now.
somebody,
is
everybody wants seconds.
Yeah, no,
so I
yeah,
would say,
exactly.
I'd say 8 to 10. I wouldn't say 12 though, 'cause
Yeah,
somebody
no, I
might
don't
want a
think so.
second
Yeah.
piece.
Oh
Well,
my
how's
God.
that?
That's amazing.
How's
Perfect.
that?
Unbelievable.
Okay.
Does that show for the camera?
Pass that.
Pass that around, you wanna show that to the camera.
Oh my goodness, look at that.
Bon appetito.
Bon appetit.
Salud.
Salud.
Oh,
Ooh,
Thank you, Joe.
best.
Thank you.
Not gonna-